You all ready to join me today in our trip to outer space?
Yeah.
Albert Shivers.
The Matrix doesn't happen.
That's very true.
Come along quietly or not.
Goodbye, Whips.
As I was about to try to bribe
From Albert
the
Shivers.
mistress of the fading light,
They don't have to like it.
they're trying to put a caravan.
The general concept is that creativity flourishes in an atmosphere of freedom.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Planet Shivers Podcast. I am Albert Shivers, and today is a big episode for me and for you, because on the show today, on this episode, is illustrator and painter Bob Eggleton. You may know him best for his illustrations and paintings of Godzilla, King Kong, and all those famous monsters, but he also works with Dark Horse Comics. He's done visual art for Magic the Gathering, as well as science fiction paintings for science fiction novels. He is also a 9-time Hugo Award winner, and the credits just go on and on for Bob. And I'm so glad and humbled that he came on the show. This is a big score for our little podcast. The best podcast you never heard in your life might get a little bit more on the map with Bob Eggleton coming on the show. And I enjoyed my conversation with him, and I'm pretty sure you guys will too. It's so interesting to hear about how he got into art, where he started, how his art grew as he progressed through his career, what he's up to now. And most interesting to me, doing art myself, was to hear about his process, to hear about how he starts work, what other artists inspire him was really interesting to me. He draws inspiration from all kinds of different art that have come before him, as well as his contemporaries. So we had a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Before we get to Bob, I want to fill you in on a little bit of what's cooking with me. This past Sunday, I went down to Maple Grove Speedway. That was a real fun time. That is a drag strip down near Reading. Just big fun. I always enjoy the NHRA events. I think of the different motorsports, they are the most interactive, so to speak. You can get up close, go into the pits, watch them tear down the cars in between each run, and there's always something going on. There's always action on the track. Yesterday, there was a lot of intermittent rain that made things real herky-jerky in terms of racing, but they got most of it in. This towards the end, like right before the final rounds, the skies really opened up, and I actually just decided to go home because it had been a full day up to that point. And if they were, I don't even know if they got back racing. If they were, though, it was going to be a while. Track drying doesn't take quite as long for those events as it does for like NASCAR or like oval asphalt racing, but still, it would have been a while because you have to wait for the rain to stop and then try to dry the track so drivers can go over 300 miles an hour. So you have to get, it has to be dry. You can't mess around when speeds of that magnitude are going to happen, and you want the drivers to be safe. If you listened to last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago, I think it was, with Karen Shapiro, and you listened to the beginning of it, I was planning on bidding on a Hank Williams III record. I did not win the bidding. Some dude snuck in out of nowhere and just bid it up to way above what I was willing to pay for a record. So it's all good. Sad end to that story. I was hoping to nab it. It's the last one on my list of damn records I want to grab, but one day it will come to me. So it's fine. For the podcast, Halloween is coming up, and all of October is going to be horror and Halloween related episodes. There's a lot of fun stuff in the works for that, and so just stay tuned, keep jumping in. If episodes interest you, listen to them. You can see what else is going on with me on Instagram at Albert Shivers. I got some new art shows coming up. I'm going to start pumping them up on Instagram and on my website, www.albertshivers.com. If you'd like to support the show, you could jump onto the Albert Shivers Patreon page, where I'm still working on building it up, but if you'd like to support the show, we would appreciate it. Lastly, the secret word for this episode is novel. Time mark the secret word on the YouTube version of this podcast and get a shout out in the next episode. I'm working to put together some prizes to have in the future. If you find the secret word, maybe you'll get an art print or a Planet Shivers poster. So we're working on that. I'm really trying to get some cool stuff going on. And I'm going to have a new motorsports series coming out on the Albert Shivers YouTube channel. That's going to be a lot of fun. Sort of serious, sort of comedy. A little bit of both. Looking to drag all my things together into something about racing, which will be a lot of fun. If you know me, you know it's a big passion of mine. I'm a gigantic fan of motorsports. And I'm always looking for ways to combine art, the podcast, and motorsports together and just come up with a fun little show. So there's still a lot of pieces to put together, so I'm not going to say too much and spoil too much, but like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like the videos, whatever you like. But subscribe to the YouTube channel. This way you'll see whatever new stuff is cooking. I'm going to start pumping out new art videos as well. So I'm getting back into the grind. The summer is over. The fall is here. It's my favorite season, and it makes me feel very, very inspired to throw lots of work out there. So I'm going to be quite restless for the next couple of months. But I want to keep putting things out, because you put things out, people see it, people enjoy it, and it gives folks something to do and help support this little ragtag project that I got going on here. That's all I'm going to say. Enough talking from me. Here is my conversation with illustrator and painter Bob Eggleton. I hope you enjoy it, and here it comes after these messages.
Swedes are special people. They live longer than anyone and never go to war. Why? Because for thousands of years they have unlocked the secrets of the universe inside themselves. Now comes this special woman, Madame Eva from Sweden, to unlock your secrets. Call this number, use your push-button phone, and she will give you a personalized reading about you, your life, love, success, and future. Call now. Madame Eva, $1.95 a minute.
Come and eat at Alberta's Pizzeria, the only place for authentic Italian Jewish cuisine, home of the only Grandma Yetta pie, the best kosher pie this side of the Wailing Wall. Plus, we cater birthdays, sweet 16, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, baptisms for the goys, and we offer free sausage topping for any bris. Alberta's Pizzeria. Pizza you'll want to eat everywhere. Artist Bob Eggleton, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, no problem. I'd love it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Absolutely. So I'd like to get started with talking about your childhood interest in science fiction and how that led you into wanting to create that art yourself.
Sure. Well, back when, as far as I can remember, I was always interested in space activities, like the Gemini missions. That's really going back, and the Apollo missions especially. And that kind of segued. It really did into science fiction. And of course, I love dinosaurs. And so it's between dinosaurs and space, somewhere in there, I became completely fascinated with science fiction of all sorts. And this, of course, led into Star Trek. It led into Godzilla. It led into 2001: A Space Odyssey. It led into everything else to follow. It just opened right up. And comic books, I loved comic books. Read famous Monsters of Filmland, all kinds of stuff. And I read all the classics like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne back in the day. And really great. And it just set my imagination going. And I started realizing that there's a bigger picture out there than what I had been led to believe. I mean, I got thrown out of Sunday school at an early age because they wanted to do this coloring of the Garden of Eden. I'm not kidding. And and so I put dinosaurs in it, and that didn't go over too well. I was 4.
It's funny. I've gotten in trouble in Sunday school for the exact same reason of adding dinosaurs into the mix, trying to figure out where they fit in.
Like, hey, what about the dinosaurs? What about the dinosaurs? And of course, like, well, we don't do that. We don't do that. I'm like, well, they existed,
right?
Like that. And that's when I started really going off in the imagination stuff. And then I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, and when I was 9, and it was one of these situations where I was with a bunch of adults, and they said, well, if this is a little too heavy for you, maybe some of us can explain it to you. Well, guess who explained it to them?
That's great.
And they're like, what was this monolith? I said, that was an alien intelligence. I said, that is omnipotent and large. And I said, it's trying to make man ascend to something bigger. And I said, it's been here for millions of years, since the time of when, ape-like humans, like that. And, and then this is like, oh my God, like, this is a 9-year-old telling us this, and it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with that. And then, of course, I got into art, and I was always drawing. And I always would draw monsters and comic book stuff, and the typical things. I'd even copy things out of comic books just because that's what you did when you were younger. When you were an artist, you were younger. And then when I was, getting older, parents are like, "What are you going to do for a living?" Like that. And I'm going, well, I was going to be a comic book artist, or I wanted to be a painter, an artist, a paint guy, and like, well, there's a secure living, like that, and that was like, mid 70s, late 70s. And, and that's kind of what my driving thing was. In like 77, 78, I sold my first professional painting to a woman. I'd done a landscape, and I sold it for like $100 in 1976 to a woman who still has it apparently to this day. And the British English landscape kind of thing. And that, I consider that at 16, that was my first professional sale. And then, of course, what happened in 1977, we got Star Wars, we got Close Encounters, we got all these great movies, and Star Trek, the motion picture. And with all of that came all these things called concept art, like by Ralph McQuarrie and Ron Cobb and all these great artists. And you thought to yourself, this is something, that's what I want to be doing. That's what I want to do. If they can do it, that's what I want to do. So it was really formative year. It was very formative for me. It was very formative stuff for me to enjoy that kind of that kind of art at a very early age. And that was my art school, and so to speak. And then going into the book covers, I'd seen work by Frank Frazetta and Michael Whalen and Kelly Freas and Paul Lair, and all legends of book covers, people that I really looked up to. And I was seeing this in bookstores, and I'm going like, somebody gets paid to do this. And so that's where I sort of decided that's where I'm going to start aiming my own work into painting book covers. And then I went to the 1980 World Science Fiction Convention, and I'd never been to anything like it my entire life. And I saw up close and personal all these beautiful art, Vincent de Fate, and, everybody. And I said, I brought my own work, and it was drawings at the time. And to my shock and surprise, I won Best Amateur Artist in both divisions the peer division and the fan division, which they that's all different. It's all very different now. But I won. They were my first awards that I won, and from then on in, I realized, I think I'm into something, and I think I'm going to keep going on with this. And that's what happened. And I started going to a lot of conventions. And back then, you went to a lot of science fiction conventions, and it was very easy because publishers. Science fiction was taking off like crazy thanks to Star Wars. It was an explosion, and publishers were digging up everything they could find, any, forgotten works, C.E. Doc Smith, Murray Leinster, people like this, stuff that just nobody had on the shelves anymore, and they were bringing it back, and they were getting some of the best artists to do these covers. And there was a book that came out called Tomorrow and Beyond, and it was edited by Ian Summers, and it was a real watershed book. It became kind of the progenitor of Spectrum and stuff like that. And it was, I believe it generated a whole new genre of artists wanting to do this kind of stuff. And I started going to science fiction conventions, and I started meeting these guys, and then being in art shows, and I was selling artwork. I was paying for my way to go to the convention. And something was working out. And then one day I had Jim Bain come along, and he asked me, "Do you do book covers?" And I said, "No, but I want to." He says, "Here's my card. Give me your card. We could talk." And I started doing book covers for him.
How many artists? I'm sure there's tons, but was book covers a popular line of work for artists to get into? Because so many of those books were from back then.
Oh yeah, I mean, all right. You had Kelly Freas and you had Frank Frazetta, and they were probably, and Boris Vallejo is another one, and they were probably the three most prominent artists that were seen in the early to mid 70s. And you had other guys like John Schoenherr and Rick Sternbach, who I considered to be mentors. They're great guys. And they were doing magazine covers and such. And I kind of started there was no social media. There wasn't anything like that. So we started going to conventions, and that was our social media, waiting in line to register or something like that. We get talking to people, and then we'd be, go down for drinks or go down for dinner or something like that. And all of a sudden you're having dinner with your icon, who you've loved. And that's how you made a living, and that's how you connected with these people, and they would in turn connect you with people, and they'd say, hey, such and such is doing this whole new line of books. He's looking for book cover artists. Why don't you contact him? And it was publishers. There was a lot of different publishers run by a lot of different companies, which meant everybody was more competitive, and it meant with competition generated innovation, and innovation was meaning different kinds of books, different kind of, really, everything was getting, wilder, and you had authors who were writing these really incredible stuff, Larry Niven and Arthur Clarke, and the list could go on of people that were writing these books, and everybody loved them, and they were selling them, and it was kind of like, it was a golden age. It was a golden age because we didn't have a computer, and we had to wait till movies came out in the theater, so we had books coming out, and people grokked onto the books. And that's what I believe happened, is that we were in this golden age of it. And I, benefited from that in a very big way. And I caught that wave. And I wouldn't say I was in the first wave of guys, but I was in kind of the second wave of guys that came up in that thing, and everything took off from there. And I always held on to my interests of Star Trek and the things I love, Godzilla, stuff like that. And I kept that flame burning in whatever I'm doing. And I had determined early on that I was going to make a living in art no matter what. So I did to Rhode Island College for a few years, and I had a wonderful teacher named Enrico Pernardi, and he's a fine artist. He was a fine artist. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was a fine artist, but he understood. He got me. He understood what I wanted to do. And he got me into H.R. Giger's work from Alien, because this was right around 1979 when Giger was becoming a household word because of his work on Alien. And we were first introduced to the term biomechanics, and nobody had heard of a term like that in their life. Biomechanics, what the hell is that? And you had Omni Magazine. You had this like Bob Guccione, the publisher of Penthouse, decided to put out this advertises. It's all dedicated to science fiction and fantasy and science fact and art. And he would feature portfolios of artists. And it's your grocery checkout. They used to have in the ads for it. And that to me was just how it all took off. And I rode that wave, and I rode a really golden age of science fiction conventions and world cons. And they were really cheap to go to and fun to be with and great to see everybody. And everything kind of took off from there. And then we get to the end of the 80s, and I was still riding high on some things. And, and then all of a sudden, oh, Bob, you're nominated for a Hugo Award for Best Professional Artist. Wow, that's nice. In 8 years, I went from amateur to professional.
Yeah.
And then I was nominated for a bunch of years. And then in 1994, God smiled upon me and I won. And then I would go on to win 7 more times for Best Professional Artist. And I'd win Best Related Book. So a total of 9 Hugos, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I won them in the time when you didn't have to petition for them. There was just, everybody was glad you won. And even if somebody, won, and I've lost many, you're still glad for the guy that won. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would take the guy's hand and say, congratulations. It was really great being in the category with you. You deserved it. And that's how that's how it is, and now I don't know what the hell's going on now, but it's not that. And I'm, very grateful of what I've done. And I feel very lucky to have done the last 40 years of my life, what I've done. I have a few regrets, but you know what? You can't go back, and you just have to move forward.
Yeah, you've done a ton of great work. How did the cover art transform into you eventually doing all the Godzilla related art and monster?
Well, Godzilla was one of the things I got into in 1966. My mother bought me this game called the Godzilla game. She goes, "There's got a dinosaur on it. I thought you'd like it." Well, she didn't really talk like that, but she goes, "Dinosaur on it. I thought you'd like it." She was British.
Right.
So anyway, she said, so I loved it. And I had to find out what this monster was.
Was it a board game?
It was a board game for 69 cents. You could get at a store. And it was the simplest game you could play in the world. You have to just race up to, without stepping on Godzilla's footprint, because if you did, you get radiation poisoning, you get thrown in the hospital for a while.
Okay.
I mean, this is a kid's game, I mean, I was just saying on Facebook the other day, they had a family toy with Vincent Price making shrunken heads. Remember that?
Yes, I've seen that. Yep.
And I mean, we lived in an age. It was a great time, And anyway, so she gave me this game, and I said, I gotta find out this Godzilla. Well, finally, around 1970, Universal Pictures was starting to air these things at local little tiny mom and pop theaters. One was placed near us called the Jerry Lewis Cinema.
Okay.
And they would show like $1 or 50-cent movies or whatever it was. And the afternoon matinee was King Kong versus Godzilla. So I had to see it. And it was love at first sight. I said, oh my God, here he is, his thing. So I started watching Godzilla on Channel 7 Sunday afternoon movie, the original one. And then, of course, Monster Zero, War of the Gargantuas, all this kind of stuff started coming out on. And then we had something in New England called Creature Double Feature in 1975, where they started showing Godzilla movies on in Saturday afternoons. And they were really poorly conditioned, cracks and breaks in them and edited and all that stuff. And yet we loved them. And I had to dial the thing as a UHF channel, so I just mess around with the TV to make it work. And now everything, if it's not HD and high 4K, people complain. And so anyway, so that got me into it. And then of course, I always loved it and held the candle on it, and people thought, oh, it's you'll grow out of it. Well, I never did. And then along comes Dark Horse Comics, and I started working for them, doing some Godzilla cover art and things like that because I asked. Okay. And then I wrote a Godzilla story for them, and then I got involved with the Godzilla paperback and publishing program that Random House initiated in the late 1990s to do with the up and coming 1998 Godzilla movie. And I did a lot of work on that. And then I started going to G-Fest, which is a big Godzilla convention in the United States. And now other conventions have popped up, but G-Fest has started 30 years ago or so. And I'll always go to that because it's kind of like seeing family again, And we're all the kaiju generation. I mean, I went to G-Fest when it was 150 people starting in the mid-90s. We thought that was a lot. Now it's just 6,000 people, and it's all because we have this thing called the legendary Godzilla series, which came out in the movies, and they've all been hits. We got a new one coming out next year. Godzilla -1 is going to hit theaters this December 1st, and we have a Godzilla TV series coming out from Apple TV. I mean, it doesn't get better than this, and so it's a great time we live in, and I'm just writing it and having so much fun with it myself. And, but, I always like my roots in science fiction because it's all part of science fiction. I just got through illustrating, and it's coming out in the fall, King Kong for MBI Books. And it's going to be actually gorgeous books. I mean, gold leafed, and it's going to be beautiful. And slipcase, the whole 9 yards, signed edition. It's going to sell for $300 and change, but they're already looking at it possibly selling out, which we're really happy about. And then I'm doing a Clark Ashton Smith book for Centipede Press, which is this thing called Hyperborea, which is this big epic that he wrote on this imaginary continent. And Smith was a friend, so he knew H.P. Lovecraft, and so they kind of shared a universe, and they kind of created their own monsters and stuff. And so Smith populated this whole land with monsters and everything. So I'm having a ball doing that. And on top of that, I got to know recently. I mean, they say when you love something so much. In my travels, in the last 10 years, I got to know the Akira Takarada, who starred in the original Godzilla movie, and his family. And he became like a father mentor to me. He was a very special man. He died. He passed away a couple of years ago, and I still love him. He was such a nice man, and he would come up and we became really great friends, like family. It was very close. And this is the guy that's the original Godzilla movie, and he's in Monster Zero, which is my favorite movie. Mm-hmm. And then lately I've gotten to know actor writer Todd Stashwick, who is in Star Trek Picard season 3, and he's in 12 Monkeys, and he's like any of us, just a great nerdy guy that loves D&D, loves the movies, loves the whole thing. And I'm not going to get into it, but we're working on something, and it's all been great. And so I just keep going on, no matter against all adversarial things.
Gotcha. One thing about your career that was cool to hear in one of your other interviews is you grown up reading Famous Monsters magazine, and you end up on the cover, your artwork on the cover.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, that was kind of fun. It was like I grew up with Famous Monsters. I was one of 40's kids, as they call us. And there was an issue back in 1975 called, it dedicated all of Japan's monsters. And then they had, I collected the magazine. It was a magazine you hid under your bed because you always felt your parents go, "Oh, that's a gross picture," So anyway, and it was, you got this magazine, and it was cheaply printed, but beautiful. The Basil Gogos covers were just what you look forward to every month. And anyway, so Famous Monsters, it ceased publication in 1983, and then it was resurrected in the 90s by someone else, and that fell to pieces. And then in the 2010, it was bought by someone else. He contacted me, Philip Kim did, and he contacted me. He wanted me to do covers for him. And we sort of got into talking about Godzilla and this sort of thing, and decent guy. And then I just did some covers, and I did some covers for him for some of their kaiju issues and things of this nature. And it was they were a lot of fun to do. It won me a Rondo Award. I'm really happy about that. So it was just fun. It was fun having a magazine that I was a child of. Now I was working doing the covers for. So there was a real sense of coming in the big full circle for that.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about your process? So you paint with oils mostly.
Now, yeah, my wife got me into oils because she only painted in oils, and I was painting in acrylics, and I was doing it out of force of habit, and I was thinking like oils get dirty and mussy and they don't dry fast and whatever. Well, was I wrong? When I started small, doing small paintings, and I figured if I could do small paintings, and if I screwed them up, it wasn't a big issue. And then the ones that were successful, I just put on a blog, and I'd sell them for $125 each, and people would buy them, and I'd say, okay, great. Well, I've learned something new, and somebody bought it, and they got a little piece of art for a nice little bit of money. Well, it became like I sold a lot of paintings that way. Then I started working on bigger works in oil, and I'm loving it every minute of it. I mean, I still do acrylics. I still have acrylics. I still have the use in my life. It's just that, I really love the pure color of oil, because oil, when it dries, what dries is the linseed oil actually solidifies. Mm-hmm. Whereas acrylics, the water in the acrylics evaporates. So the paint kind of contracts and it loses a little bit of color. So that's why when you paint with a rich acrylic color, and it looks great in the tube, nice and wet, then It looks all dry and pasty sometimes. And that's because the water's gone out of it. And whereas oils don't do that, because the actual, the medium, which is linseed oil, actually solidifies in the paint. So it keeps the paint and the colors of them is actually, So I would say it's a more honest way of working like that, in that sense. Although I'm pretty successful in acrylics too. A lot of people look at my acrylics and they think that they're oils. So, that I would consider that successful too. I'm really radical in my approach to it. I don't do this methodical, paint by numbers and build things up with shades. And I just throw paint at the canvas and hope the hell it comes out great.
Okay. Gotcha. One thing that I'd heard you said, which I do the same thing, is looking at other art very, very close, getting right up close to it. I like to do too.
Yeah.
Who are some of the artists that outside of the science fiction world that inspired you?
Oh boy, that's a big list, but
Okay.
I'll get to it. Gustave Doré. If you Google Gustave Doré, normally people are familiar with his etchings. And he illustrated Dante's Inferno. He illustrated the Divine Comedy. He illustrated the Bible. He did incredible artwork for the Bible. I'm not even religious, but it's like, wow, this is incredible artwork. And I mean, the whole thing of Satan in the Divine Comedy, it's Satan being cast out of heaven, and it's just an incredible piece. And he did another one of Leviathan. And anyway, excuse me. What happened was. He also painted, and he painted Scottish landscapes. And his landscape painting and his surreal painting actually, to me, rivals his work in what he did in his drawings and etchings. And you look up close, and I was very up close to his work a couple of weeks ago in Scotland, and you can just see where he's just wiped on paint and just scraped it on, and there's texture on it and all this stuff. And the same thing, another guy I love is Joseph Millard Turner. He is my go-to guy in terms of color, and how his insane use of just going wild with something and piling up paint, and everything would just come out, and he would just he'd work at it and hope for the best. And he would have this incredible confidence. If one is to go by the movie, Mr. Turner, which he was played by Timothy Spall excellently, he has incredible confidence with his work. He would look at his work, and he'd say to other artists too. He'd look at their work in the Academy View and say, "It looks fine. It looks fine. You're going to do great. You're going to do great." And Constable was a massive insecure. He's another artist I'm inspired by. I love his work, John Constable, and he was an absolute massive insecurity. And Turner would just come along and pat him on the shoulder and say, "You'll be great. You'll be great," like that, And that's what you needed that. And I could cite so many great artists. I mean, it's just hard to name them all. Every single great classical artist influenced, even Da Vinci, some of Da Vinci's work.
Uh-huh.
some of the British landscape artists and some of the Hudson Valley River guys here, Frederick Church, Albert Bierstadt. These people did incredible work, and when you get up close to it, it's just literally scraped. These I get museum guards and docents really nervous because I get right up close to the artwork and I'm looking at it and I'm like inches from it because I want to, and I'm getting my iPad here to take photos like this far away from the surface because I want to get that. I want to get a good look at that texture. And then when I'm looking at it, the nice part is this is what's really a great feeling is that I'm looking at Turner's work and it's not intimidating. I'm looking at Gustave Doré's work and it's not intimidating. And I'm going like, this is, I'm getting there. I'm doing something. I'm doing it. And that's what goes through my mind. It never gets depressing. It just gets like, I'm doing it.
So when you say, what do you mean by intimidating?
Intimidating. Like a lot of artists, they go to a museum and they'll go, oh God, they're brilliant artists. These guys are really great artists. I won't name names, but they're really great artists. And they go into their thing and they think, oh man, I saw that Caravaggio and I just want to cut my wrist. I hate it. I hate my, no, don't worry about it. Have your icons, have the people that always have the elder gods you love, because one day, and you may not be alive, but one day you'll be an elder god to somebody. And I really believe that. And, I had a show I was in that had to be curated by the director of British landscapes from the Tate. And the word I got on a private QT was he compared my stuff with Turner and some of the great British landscape painters. And win. I'll take it. I'll go with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like when you're getting that kind of thing, I'll just go with it. And, I'm not into trends. I'm not into people telling me, well, this kind of thing sells. I don't do that. I just do what gets my fire revved up. And that's what I do. And I work with people I love working with. And this people, call me up and or write me and I'm not sure if I'm going to work with it. Yeah. But there's other people they email me or I communicate with them and, immediately it's just like we hit it off so well. I just say, I just want to work with this guy.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah. And when I'm passionate about something, I throw 150% of myself into it too.
That's the way it has to be, I think, especially with art.
Oh God, yeah. In the times we live in now, it's like you gotta fight for that passion too, and that is so hard to do because believe me, I'm feeling it. It gets to me. It really gets to me, because we're in a time when the AI stuff's come along, so it hasn't affected me per se. I'm still busy, crazy, but I'll tell you about AI. It's like, what it's done is it makes people think art is cheap and easy to do. It makes people think process is not easy to do. Process takes time and it takes effort and it takes work and it takes dedication to what you're doing. And It doesn't take, it doesn't something you type prompts into a thing and come up with this, and the funny part is that somebody put prompts in of my stuff to see if they could do a Bob Eggleton and it came out a mess. And because it came out a mess because I was beating the AI because it couldn't figure me out, and that to me was a win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a victory.
Sure, I've seen some interesting stuff. But you know what? It's still not a painting. It's still not a human-made painting. It's never going to be a human-made painting. And don't anybody ever kid themselves that this is like, this is gonna, because art has survived centuries. It has survived centuries and centuries of criticism and dark ages and all this kind of stuff, and it's survived. And ultimately, what's going to happen is that the human-made art will survive. It'll just become more valuable because the machine stuff, it's fine. Yeah, all right. I've looked at it, and there's some stuff that I've said, it's interesting, it's impressive. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, I could just take that and rework it a bit, and it solved the lighting problem for me. But I'm going to take it and rework it and make a real painting out of it and put my own self into it.
Right.
And that is when that kind of thing can actually help you. It can be a tool in the process, but it's not a means to an end. And anybody that thinks, oh, I could do this and I can get it for nothing like that. No, ultimately it's going to have its limit. Ultimately, it's not going to work. Ultimately, it's going to come back to human beings designing things, because that's the way it's been.
I couldn't agree more with that. Then it's the digital stuff is definitely out there a lot, and it can get frustrating, I guess.
Yeah. I love digital art. Don't get me wrong. I think digital art in the hands of amazingly talented artists is just a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I know incredible artists. Todd Lockwood is a good one. He uses mostly a digital for his paintings. Incredible artist. But he lets his work is simply the medium is simply the tool, but it's the talent in his head and the talent in his hands that comes through. And he could sit down with a bunch of oils and do just as amazing job in oils.
Right.
And that's just something that you have to it's just the way it is, and it's the same thing with writing. A computer's not going to write something for you. I had somebody write a biography of me in that chatbot thing.
Okay.
Oh, God, it was bad. It was awful. It states that I won 5 Hugo Awards. Wrong. It states that I worked with Larry Niven. Wrong. I don't know where it was getting this from. And I'm going like, I hope you're not taking this seriously. And so, and I work also with people that don't like that stuff. They think that they don't care. They're willing to pay for me to do something really good for them because they think this AI stuff is crap. And it's just so fast and short-lived. And that's the thing with it. Somebody comes up with something and thinks, oh, I created that. It's like, no, you didn't. It just skimmed it. It scraped it off of data, such as my stuff online. It scraped it off these images and reinserted it and reworked it in a different way. And you've got Jim Burns, who does this stuff. He puts in some prompts. He gets some ideas out, but then he reworks it to make his own painting. And in a way, I can get behind that. But it's the people that think they're going to get something for nothing. That's the problem. This something for nothing attitude where it's on the internet, so it's free. No, it isn't. Talent, hard work, whether you write, whether you do art, the process is hard.
Agreed. In closing, Bob, where can folks find you to see your work online?
Instagram is a big one.
Okay.
Follow me on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook too. Don't look at my website. I took it down because it had some problems with it. I didn't like the server. So we're retooling it at the moment to figure out how I can make it a little more friendly. And I will have prints and things like that available, like a little store on it, so people can buy things. But I'm on the internet. Just Google my name and you'll see pictures come up. And but again, Instagram is great because Instagram, for me, it's immediate. It's very friendly. It's usually friendly, except when I'm getting like the porn girls that are trying to.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is funny. It's like, I love your work. Oh, hey, thanks. Would you do this for yourself? Yeah. What are you doing right now? I'm getting out of the shower. Bye.
Yep. Exactly. Well,
that's what it's like. But anyway, yeah, this is joyful. This is great.
Cool. And I want to say, not only on behalf of me, but probably hundreds of other artists, you're a big inspiration, Bob. And I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
I've loved your work for a long time before I even knew it was you doing it.
Thank you.
And we had met years ago at a chiller
I remember
convention.
your face. I remember your face. I do.
Okay. So we had met at a chiller convention, and you've stuck in my mind since then. And I've looked at your work, and now that I have this platform to talk to people,
Sure,
you're
yeah, sure.
somebody who I was really looking forward to talking to.
Great, super.
Well,
All right.
Thank you again, Bob.
Thank you very much, and thank everybody. Thank you for enjoying my work, and there's more to come, and all kinds of stuff coming out, and surprises, and it's changing in ways that we can't imagine. But I'm gonna sort of work with it as best I can, and I'll do the art as as it comes. So thank you all, and thank you for the lovely words.
And thank you for listening to another episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. And a big, big thank you to Bob Eggleton for coming on the show and talking with me about his work and about how he got started. It was really great conversation, and I'm glad I was able to share it with you guys. There's a lot more stuff coming. I think I'm going to do a one-off episode to fill you in. I try not to do too much jabbering when I have a guest on beforehand, but there's a lot of stuff I want to share with you guys, so I might have to do a solo episode at some point soon. We'll see what happens. But until then, you could find all episodes, including this one, on all major podcast platforms and YouTube with video. Don't forget to check out Instagram at Albert Shivers, Facebook Albert Shivers, Patreon, the Albert Shivers page, and www.albertshivers.com. However many W's, 3, right? Until the next episode and until the next time, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else.
Goodbye, wimps.